The alarm screamed through the command center of the border station. Admiral ran down the metal corridor, his boots echoing against the floor. He had served the Empire for 40 years, and he had never heard these particular alarms before. They meant only one thing: something massive had been detected at the edge of their territory. He burst through the doors into the observation room. Dozens of officers stood frozen, staring at the main display screen. The screen showed a cloud of red dots, so many that they looked like a swarm of insects. Each dot represented a ship. "Report," demanded, trying to keep his voice steady. Science officer turned to face him. Her face was pale. "Admiral, we detected them 10 minutes ago. Initial count shows over 3,000 vessels. The number keeps growing as our sensors get better readings." 3,000 ships. Felt his blood run cold. The entire border fleet had only 800 ships. He moved closer to the display, studying the formation. The unknown fleet moved with purpose, not the random pattern of explorers or merchants. "Have you identified them?" he asked. Shook her head. "No, sir. Their energy signatures don't match anything in our database. We've 247 spacefaring species in this galaxy. These ships match none of them." His hands gripped the edge of the console. Unknown was bad. Unknown with 3,000 ships was worse. What's their trajectory? A young officer named Minu pulled up the navigation data. "They're moving toward our territory, Admiral. Current speed suggests they'll reach our outer colonies in 72 hours. 72 hours. 3 days to prepare for possible war with an enemy they knew nothing about." Straightened his uniform and made his decision. "Send an emergency message to the capital. Alert all border fleets. Begin defensive preparations immediately." The officers scattered to their tasks, remained at the display, watching the red dots crawl across the star map. Something about this felt familiar, like a half-remembered nightmare. He called out, "Run a comparison against classified files, all of them." His fingers flew across her console. Minutes passed in tense silence. Then her face went even paler, if that was possible. "Admiral, I found something. One match. Confidence level, 87%. "Show me." The main screen changed. A single word appeared: humanity. Below it, massive red letters spelled out: Category 5 Threat, Extreme Danger. The room went silent. Every officer stopped working and stared at the screen, felt his stomach drop. He had hoped, prayed even, that it would be anyone else. Pirates, rebels, even the dreaded swarm would be better than this. "That's impossible," Minu whispered. "Humans are just stories to scare children." "They're not stories," said quietly. "I was there, 50 years ago at the first contact." Every eye in the room turned to him. Had never spoken about that day. The Empire had classified all records of the encounter. Most people thought humanity was a myth, an exaggerated tale of a minor border skirmish. "It was supposed to be simple," continued, still staring at the screen. "We found a human colony ship in unclaimed space. Just one ship with 10,000 humans in suspended sleep. Our fleet commander decided to capture it. We had 20 warships. They had one colony vessel with no weapons." He paused, remembering. "They woke up. 500 humans, awake and aware that we were trying to take their ship. They fought back with mining equipment, construction tools, anything they could use as weapons. We boarded their ship with 3,000 soldiers. Only 200 made it back to our ships." The room was utterly silent now. "When we retreated, they followed us. One damaged colony ship chasing 20 warships. They crashed it into our flagship. The collision killed them all, but it also crippled our fleet. We limped back to base with half our ships destroyed and 8,000 soldiers dead." His voice was flat, emotionless. "That was one ship, one small colony vessel. Now imagine 3,000 warships." Broke the silence. "Admiral, the Empress is calling. Emergency channel." The screen changed again. Empress appeared, sitting on her throne in the Imperial Palace. She was young for an empress, only 60 years old, but her eyes were hard and calculating. "Admiral," she said, "I've received your report. Confirm. Do you believe this fleet is human?" "Yes, Your Majesty. All evidence points to humanity." The Empress was quiet for a moment. "I've reviewed the classified files. Your report from 50 years ago made interesting reading. You recommended that humanity be avoided at all costs." "Yes, Your Majesty. I'm convening the Imperial Council immediately. You will attend via secure link. In the meantime, prepare your fleet but do not engage. Under any circumstances, do not fire first. Is that clear?" "Perfectly clear, Your Majesty." The screen went dark, turned back to his officers. "You heard the Empress. Battle stations but weapons cold. We defend only if attacked." As the crew rushed to follow orders, walked to the observation window. Outside, he could see warships moving into defensive positions. In the distance, stars twinkled peacefully, unaware of the storm approaching. Appeared beside him. "Admiral, why are humans so dangerous? They're just one species like us." Remembered the human faces he had seen 50 years ago. They had been terrified, but they fought anyway. They knew they would die, but they chose to fight to give their families a chance to escape. He had seen that determination in their eyes, a fire that didn't exist in any other species he had encountered. "They fight differently," he said finally. "Every other species fights to win. Humans fight like they have nothing to lose. They don't fear death the same way we do. They fear failure, dishonor, and abandoning their people. That makes them unpredictable. That makes them deadly." "But we outnumber them," said. "Even 3,000 ships against our entire empire." "Numbers didn't matter 50 years ago," interrupted. "They won't matter now. If this is humanity, then we have only three choices: surrender, negotiate, or die fighting. There is no fourth option." He turned away from the window. "Send a message on all frequencies. Standard first contact protocol. Tell them we mean no harm and wish to communicate." Minyu set to work immediately. The message went out, traveling at light speed toward the approaching fleet. Now they could only wait and hope that humanity was in a merciful mood. Returned to the command console and pulled up the files again. He read through the reports, the casualty lists, the tactical analyses. Every document said the same thing: humanity should be avoided. They were too dangerous, too unpredictable, too willing to sacrifice everything for victory. The Empire had conquered 46 different species. They had fought wars across 100 star systems. They had never lost a major battle until they met humanity. And that was just one colony ship. Looked at the 3,000 red dots on his screen and wondered if the Empire would survive the next 3 days. The hours crawled by with no response from the approaching fleet. Minyu had sent messages on every known frequency, in every major language in the galaxy. Silence was the only answer. The unknown ships continued their steady advance toward space. Stood in the council chamber, his image projected across light years to the Imperial Palace. Around the circular table sat the most powerful people in the Empire. Empress occupied the high seat, her face calm but her eyes worried. "We cannot simply wait for them to arrive," Counselor said, slamming his hand on the table. "If this is an invasion fleet, we must strike first. Catch them before they enter our territory." "And if they're peaceful," Counselor countered, "we would start a war over nothing. How many lives would that cost?" "How many lives will it cost if we do nothing and they attack?" shot back. Empress raised her hand for silence. "Admiral, you've had time to study the sensor data. What can you tell us about this fleet?" Pulled up the latest readings on the shared display. "We deployed reconnaissance drones 2 hours ago. They managed to get close enough for visual confirmation before the unknown fleet destroyed them." The display showed grainy images of massive warships. The ships were angular and brutal, with no decorative elements. Every surface served a purpose. Weapons bristled from their hulls like the spines of a predator. These are warships, continued, not exploration vessels or cargo haulers. Each one is larger than our biggest dreadnought. The fleet formation is perfect, suggesting excellent discipline and coordination. Most concerning, their engines are more efficient than anything we've ever seen. They're achieving speeds that should require 3 times more energy. Could they be human? The Empress asked directly. Yes, said. The ship design matches what we saw 50 years ago. Purely functional, no aesthetics. Humans don't decorate their weapons. They also match the technology signatures in our classified database. A younger officer appeared on one of the secondary displays. Captain looked fresh from the academy, probably no more than 30 years old. Your Majesty, if I may speak. The Empress nodded. I've read the historical accounts of the first contact with humanity. With all respect to Admiral, those reports seem exaggerated. One colony ship defeating 20 warships. It's more likely that we faced some technical failures and blamed it on human capabilities. I think we're letting fear cloud our judgment. Before could respond, another display activated. Commander Sora's face appeared and saw her hands trembling. She had served under him 50 years ago, had been on the boarding team that entered the human colony ship. Captain, Sora said, her voice tight. I was there. I walked through corridors filled with human dead. I watched 5 of my squad mates die to a single human wielding a piece of broken pipe. The reports aren't exaggerated. If anything, they don't capture how terrifying humans are in combat. Looked skeptical but stayed silent. Sora continued, directing her words to the Empress. Your Majesty, humans don't fight like we do. They don't retreat when wounded. They don't surrender when outnumbered. I saw a human with both legs broken still trying to crawl toward us with a knife. They fought like machines, like they didn't feel pain or fear. Everyone feels pain and fear, said softly. Maybe, Sora replied, but humans don't let it stop them. That's what makes them dangerous. They decide to do something and then they do it no matter the cost. The council chamber fell quiet. On the main display, the red dots representing the unknown fleet had moved closer. 60 hours until they reached Prime. We need more information, Empress decided. Admiral, continue your analysis. Counselor, prepare diplomatic options. Counselor, ready our defense fleets but keep them on standby. We will not fire first, but we will be prepared. The council dismissed, returned his attention to his command center, was still at her station, running analysis after analysis on the sensor data. Admiral, she called out, I found something strange. The fleet's power signatures are too efficient. They're converting energy at rates that exceed our theoretical maximum by 40%. What does that mean? Either they've discovered new physics, or their technology is far more advanced than ours. Looked up from her console. Only one species in our database has shown this level of technological advancement. Humanity finished. Over the next hours, more data came in. The unknown fleet had passed 3 monitoring stations without slowing down or acknowledging them. They weren't trying to communicate. They weren't showing any interest in territory. They were simply moving through it like it didn't exist. Minyu approached with a concerned expression. Admiral, the fleet just changed course. His blood went cold. Show me. The navigation display updated. The unknown fleet had turned, no longer heading for the outer colonies. Their new trajectory pointed directly at Prime, the capital world of the Empire, the home to 12 billion. Time to arrival, asked, though he dreaded the answer. 48 hours, Minyu replied. Immediately opened a channel to the Empress. Your Majesty, the situation has changed. They're heading straight for the capital. Empress' face showed the first sign of real fear. Are they hostile? I don't know, but they're certainly not friendly. No peaceful fleet ignores all communication attempts and heads directly for someone's home world. How long do we have? 2 days. The Empress closed her eyes briefly, then opened them with renewed determination. Issue a total mobilization order. Every ship, every fleet, every defense station. Bring them all to Prime. If this is humanity coming for us, we'll show them that we've learned since our last meeting. Wanted to tell her that numbers wouldn't matter. He wanted to explain that if humanity wanted to destroy them, no amount of ships would stop it. But he was a soldier, and soldiers followed orders. Yes, Your Majesty, we'll be ready. Over the next day, warships from across the Empire began arriving at the capital system. They came in groups of 10, 50, 100. The orbital space around Prime filled with military vessels until the planet looked like it wore a crown of steel and fire. Commanded one of the arriving squadrons. He positioned his ships according to his defensive plan, forming layers of protection around the planet. Despite his earlier skepticism, even he had to admit the situation looked grim. Sora's squadron took position near the front lines. She had volunteered for the most dangerous post, the first wave that would face the enemy if they attacked. Her crew knew her history with humans, and they trusted her judgment. In the command center, continued her analysis. Admiral, final count. We have 12,000 warships defending the capital. It's the largest fleet we've ever assembled. 12,000 against 3,000. The numbers should have been comforting. They weren't. Studied the defensive formation on his display. Every ship was in position. Every weapon was ready. Every crew member knew their duty. The Empire had faced enemies before and won. They had crushed rebellions, defeated invasions, and conquered worlds. But they had never faced humanity in a real battle. Sir, Minyu called out, I'm receiving something. It's on an old emergency frequency, one we haven't used in decades. Put it through. Static filled the room, then cleared. A voice spoke in perfect, with no accent or hesitation. This is the Terran Defense Fleet. State your intentions. The room went silent. Every officer turned to stare at the speakers. The voice was calm, professional, and utterly terrifying in its implications. It was humanity, and they wanted to know what they intended to do about it. Stared at the communication console, his mind racing. The humans had spoken first, which meant they didn't consider them a threat. That could be good or very, very bad. Open a channel, he ordered. Direct response. Minyu worked quickly, his fingers shaking slightly as he established the connection. The main screen flickered, and a face appeared. The human looked surprisingly ordinary. Male, middle-aged, with short dark hair and calm eyes. He wore a simple military uniform with no decoration except a single patch on his shoulder that read, TDF Commander DOHYUN. I am Admiral of the Empire, said, keeping his voice steady. We detected your fleet approaching our territory. You did not respond to our communication attempts. We assembled our forces to defend our home. Nodded slowly. Understandable. We were running silent to avoid detection by our enemy. We didn't realize we had entered claimed space until your message reached us. Your enemy felt a chill run down his spine. If humanity was hunting something, that something was probably worse than humanity itself. We're tracking a hostile force that entered this galaxy 3 months ago. They've been moving through this sector and we followed them here. His expression grew darker. Have any of your colonies stopped responding recently? Felt his stomach drop. He glanced at who was already pulling up the reports. Her face went pale. 3 colonies, said quietly, all in the outer rim. Communication ceased 2 weeks ago. We thought it was equipment failure. It wasn't, said flatly. The Void Collective has already reached your territory. If those colonies have gone dark, then everyone there is either dead or converted. Converted, Empress's voice came through the channel. She had joined the conversation from the palace. Converted into what? His image split as a second display activated, showing footage of something that made his blood freeze. The image showed a world covered in gray mass, like metal and flesh had merged into something unnatural. Structures that might have been buildings or ships moved across the surface, but they looked organic, alive, wrong. The Void Collective uses nanotechnology to convert all matter into processing units, explained. Organic, inorganic, it doesn't matter. Everything becomes part of their network. Planets, ships, people, they don't conquer, they consume and convert. That's impossible, his voice came through from the council chamber. No species would do that to others. The Void Collective isn't a species anymore, said. They were, once. Now they're just a network of corrupted matter spreading across the universe like a disease. We've been fighting them for 200 years across multiple galaxies. The weight of that statement hung in the air. 200 years of war, multiple galaxies, realized with growing horror that humanity hadn't brought 3,000 ships to invade the Empire. They had brought 3,000 ships because that's what was needed to fight the Void Collective. Why didn't you warn us? Empress asked. We tried, replied. We sent warning messages to every civilization in this sector 5 years ago. Most ignored them. Some attacked our messenger ships. We learned to stop warning and start hunting. Sara's voice cut in from her squadron's channel. Commander, if this Void Collective is as dangerous as you say, why haven't we encountered them before? His eyes found her location on his tactical display. Because humanity has been standing between you and them. We've kept them away from populated space for the last 50 years. But they adapt, they learn, and they've broken through our containment. That's why we're here. And now asked, what are your intentions? We're going to destroy the Void Collective forces in your territory, said simply. You can help us, or you can stay out of our way. Your choice. The bluntness was shocking but appreciated it. No politics, no games, just cold reality. Empress spoke after a long pause. Show us what we're facing, all the data you have. For the next hour, the humans shared everything. Technical specifications, tactical analyses, recorded battles. The Void Collective ships were massive, combining organic and mechanical elements in ways that understanding. They didn't have crews, they were the crew. Every ship was a living thing, converted from some other species that had fallen to the collective. Studied the data with increasing alarm. Admiral, their conversion process is terrifyingly fast. A single Void ship can convert an entire colony in 3 days, if they've been in our territory for 2 weeks. Then we're already running out of time, finished. Empress made her decision. Commander, the Empire accepts your offer of alliance. We'll commit our forces to defend our colonies and help destroy this threat. Good, said. We'll need to coordinate our forces. I'm sending tactical protocols to your fleet. Your ships will need to integrate with our command structure. Our protocols are different from yours, objected. Then you'll learn ours, said without hesitation. We've been fighting the Void Collective for 2 centuries. You've been fighting them for 0 seconds. Follow our lead if you want to survive. The connection ended. In the command center, officers began receiving the human tactical protocols, studied them with growing alarm. The human battle strategies were insane. They involved calculated sacrifices, suicide runs, and maneuvers that would kill most crews from the gravitational forces alone. This is madness, one of his officers said. These tactics assume everyone is willing to die. Remembered what Sara had said about humans fighting like they had nothing to lose. Maybe that was the point. Maybe you couldn't fight something like the Void Collective with normal tactics. In her squadron, Sara read through the same protocols and felt a grim understanding settle over her. This was how humans always fought, not because they were brave or fearless, but because they understood that some enemies required total commitment. Half measures meant death. Hesitation meant death. Only complete determination gave a chance at survival. All ships, broadcast across the fleet. We're moving out. Our target is the outer colonies. The Void Collective is already there and we're going to stop them. 12,000 warships began moving, joined by 3,000 human vessels. The combined fleet was the largest military force had ever seen. It should have made him confident. Instead, he felt only dread. Because if humanity needed this many ships, the enemy must be truly horrifying. The fleet traveled for 18 hours before reaching the first dark colony. The planet hung in space, silent and gray. No lights, no transmissions, no signs of life. The atmosphere had changed color, turned to a sickly purple that no natural atmosphere could produce. "Scanning," reported. "I'm reading. Admiral, I'm reading energy signatures, thousands of them, they're void ships. They were hiding on the surface, dormant." As if responding to the scan, the gray surface of the planet began to move. Shapes rose from the converted matter, massive ships that had been part of the planet's mass. They were hideous, organic-looking things with metal bones showing through flesh-like hulls. Weapons that looked like twisted limbs rotated toward the fleet. "Contact's voice came through calmly. "All ships engage as planned. Forces follow Protocol 7. Do not deviate, do not retreat, push through." The Void Collective ships opened fire, and the battle began. The universe filled with light and death, and realized that this was only the beginning. The real war was just starting. The first wave of Void Collective ships hit the front lines like a hammer. Watched from his command center as the battle unfolded on a dozen different displays. The Void ships moved in ways that shouldn't be possible, twisting and turning as if they weren't bound by physics. "Forward squadrons maintain formation," ordered. "Fire at will." The ships opened fire with everything they had. Energy beams, missiles, kinetic weapons all streaked through space toward the Void ships. Most of the shots connected, tearing chunks from the organic hulls. But the Void ships kept coming, and worse, they were learning. "Admiral," called out, "the enemy is adapting to our weapons. Their shields are adjusting in real time. Our effectiveness is dropping by 12% with each volley. Cursed, all ships, rotate weapon frequencies. Don't give them a pattern to learn." The fleet adjusted, but it wasn't enough. The Void ships were too fast, too adaptive. Within minutes, the front line began to collapse. Ships exploded or went dark, their systems corrupted by the Void Collective's nanomachines. Watched the casualty reports climb and felt sick. "Pull back to secondary positions," he ordered. "Reform defensive lines." As the ships retreated, the human fleet moved forward. Expected them to use the same tactics, to fire and fall back like any reasonable military force. Instead, the human ships accelerated directly into the Void formation. A young officer named appeared on one of the communication channels. She was human, a tactical officer on flagship. "Forces, watch and learn. This is how you fight the Void." The human ships broke every rule of conventional warfare. They used the vessels as mobile cover, hiding behind the larger ships before darting out to strike. They deployed weapons had never seen, missiles that accelerated to near light speed, mines that created artificial black holes, drones that dissolved themselves into acid clouds when they hit enemy hulls. Most shocking were the pilots. Human fighters performed maneuvers that should have killed everyone inside. They spun, twisted, and burned at accelerations that would turn into paste. Somehow, the humans survived. "How are they doing that?" one of his officers asked in amazement. "Enhanced physiology," answered, having heard the question. "Cybernetic augmentation, genetic modification, and stubbornness, mostly stubbornness." Watched from his captain's chair as a human fighter dove directly into a Void ship's hangar bay and detonated its reactor. The Void ship split in half, spilling corrupted matter into space. The human pilot had just killed himself to destroy one enemy vessel. "They're insane," his second officer whispered. "No," said slowly, beginning to understand. "They know exactly what they're doing. They're choosing to die to save the rest of us." The battle raged for hours. The Void ships kept coming, wave after wave, as if the planet itself was producing them. In a way, it was. The entire world had become a factory for conversion and production. Sora's squadron fought alongside a group of human fighters. She tried to follow their tactics to match their movements. Her ships couldn't handle the acceleration, but they could learn the strategy. Use speed, use surprise, hit hard, and move before the enemy adapted. All ships focus fire on coordinates 7-7 Alpha, she commanded. Maximum power all weapons. Her squadron unleashed everything they had at a single point on the nearest void ship. The concentrated fire punched through its adaptive shields and detonated something inside. The ship convulsed and exploded, taking 2 others with it. "Good kills," voice came through. "You're learning fast." But the price was high. Sora watched as one of her ships took fire from 3 different void vessels. The shields collapsed, the hull breached, and atmosphere vented into space. She saw the escape pods launching, but the void ships targeted them immediately. Most never made it. In the command center, Minyu's communication ship detected something new. "Admiral, I'm picking up massive energy readings from deeper in the system. More void ships are coming." "How many?" "At least 50, maybe more." "Made a quick decision. We need to stop them before they reach the battle. Can you calculate their trajectory?" "Already working on it. They're heading." "Admiral, they're heading for our main communication relay. If they destroy it, we'll lose contact with the rest of the Empire." That relay was how they coordinated the defense, how they called for reinforcements, how they warned other systems about the threat. Without it, they would be isolated. "Minyu, your ship is the fastest," said. "Take the relay's data core and run. Get it to the next system. Warn everyone." Minyu's face went pale, but he nodded. "Understood, Admiral. What about my crew?" "Evacuate them to other ships. You'll need the space for the data core and more speed." Stood up from her station. "Admiral, I volunteer to go with him. Someone needs to analyze the Void Collective's patterns and make sure the data gets to where it's needed." Wanted to refuse, but he knew she was right. "Approved. Both of you go now, fast as you can." Minyu and ran for the shuttle bay. Within minutes, Minyu's small communication ship detached from the station and burned hard for the relay. Behind them, the void ships detected the movement and began pursuit. "We've got company," Minyu said, checking his sensors. "I see them," replied. She was already downloading the relay's data core, petabytes of information flowing into their ship's memory banks. "Almost done. Just need 2 more minutes." 2 minutes? Minyu looked at the pursuing void ships and did the math. They would arrive in 90 seconds. "You need to go faster." "I'm trying. The data is massive, and I can't compress it anymore without corruption." The void ships fired. Energy beams tore through space, missing Minyu's ship by meters. He pushed the engines harder, feeling the ship shudder under the strain. 1 minute left, said. "Come on, come on." The data transfer completed. "Got it," she shouted. "Go, go." Minyu activated the jump drive. For one terrible moment, nothing happened. Then space twisted and they vanished, leaving the void ships behind. But the ship's jump drive had been damaged by the close weapons fire. Warning alarms screamed through the tiny bridge. Minyu tried to stabilize their trajectory, but it was too late. They were going to exit jump space inside a planet's gravity well, which would tear them apart. "Get to the escape pod with the data core," Minyu said calmly. "I'll stay and keep the ship stable long enough for you to launch." "I'm not leaving you," said. "You have to. The data is more important than both of us." Minyu smiled at her. "Go, that's an order." Looked at him for a long moment, then grabbed the data core and ran for the pod. The ship began shaking violently as it exited jump space. Minyu wrestled with the controls, keeping the ship together by will alone. The escape pod launched. Minyu saw it on his sensors, accelerating away safely. Then the ship's reactor went critical, and everything turned to white light. Back at the battle's voice came through the communication channels. Communication officer has been recovered. Data core is secure. Mean you died like a human. There is no higher honor. Closed his eyes briefly, then opened them. The battle was still raging. People were still dying. There was no time to mourn. All ships push forward, he commanded. Make their sacrifices mean something. The battle lasted 14 more hours. 14 hours of death, fire, and sacrifice. But slowly, the combined and human forces began to win. The void ships fell one by one, their corrupted hulls breaking apart under concentrated fire. When the last void vessel finally exploded, a strange silence fell over the battlefield. Looked at the casualty reports and felt his heart break. 40% of the forces were gone, dead, corrupted, or damaged beyond repair. The human fleet had suffered similar losses. Thousands of lives ended in a single day. Begin search and rescue operations, he ordered quietly. Find survivors, recover the dead. Across the fleet, and human crews worked together, searching through debris fields for escape pods and survivors. Ship pulled 3 escape pods from a destroyed cruiser, then found 2 human pods floating near a wrecked destroyer. His medical team treated everyone equally, saving lives without caring about species. In one debris field, Sora's squadron found a damaged fighter with a trapped pilot inside. The cockpit was crushed, the pilot unconscious and bleeding. It took 2 hours of careful cutting to free her. When they finally pulled her out, Sora saw that the pilot was human, barely 20 years old, with burns covering half her face. "Stay with me," Sora said, applying emergency medical gel to the burns. "You're going to make it." The young pilot opened her eyes, smiled weakly, and whispered, "Did we win?" "Yes," Sora said, "we won." The pilot closed her eyes again, but she was still breathing. Sora carried her to the medical bay personally, refusing to let anyone else take her. She stayed there while the doctors worked, watching them save the human girl's life. Later, after the immediate crisis had passed, Sora found herself thinking about the battle. She had fought alongside humans for the first time, really fought with them rather than against them. She understood now what had meant all those years ago. Humans weren't fearless. They were terrified just like everyone else, but they were more afraid of giving up, of letting others die, of failing their mission. That fear drove them forward when everyone else would retreat. That's what made them dangerous. That's what made them heroes. Came to the same conclusion in his own way. He had watched human pilots sacrifice themselves a dozen times during the battle. Each time, they made the choice deliberately, calmly, as if dying was just another part of the mission. He realized that he had been wrong to dismiss the old stories. If anything, the stories hadn't been exaggerated enough. On Prime, Empress called another council meeting. This time, attended in person, his image replaced by his physical presence in the council chamber. He looked tired with dark circles under his eyes, but he stood straight and proud. "Commander," the Empress said, "on behalf of the Empire, I thank you for your help. Without your forces, we would have lost everything." "You're welcome," said simply. "But this was just one battle. The Void Collective has more forces coming. This galaxy isn't safe yet." "Then we'll fight together," said. "I'm formally proposing the Terran Defense Pact. Our forces will operate as allies against this threat." Counselor, who had argued for attacking the human fleet just days ago, nodded slowly. "I support this proposal. I was wrong about humanity. You're not invaders, you're defenders." "We defend all sapient life," said. "That's what makes us human, not our technology, not our tactics, our values." "Then perhaps," Counselor said softly, "those values are what make us all human, regardless of species." The pact was signed that day, and human forces would share resources, technology, and personnel. A joint military command was established, with and sharing authority. In the weeks that followed, the alliance grew stronger. Human military advisors taught crews new tactics. Engineers helped repair human ships with their advanced manufacturing facilities. Cultural exchange programs started, with officers from both species learning about each other. Was assigned as a liaison to the human fleet. He spent his days working with the tactical officer who had guided them through the battle. She taught him how to think like a human soldier, how to see every problem as solvable if you were willing to pay the price. Humans lose a lot, admitted one day. We've been fighting for 200 years. Entire worlds have been lost. Billions have died. But we keep fighting because the alternative is worse. Don't you ever want to give up? Asked. Every day, said honestly. But then I remember all the species we've saved. The civilizations that still exist because we stood between them and the darkness. That's worth fighting for. Sora became the commander of the first joint human squadron. Her crews called her the Human Heart because she had learned to fight with human determination while keeping compassion. She trained her pilots in the new tactics, but always reminded them that sacrifice was meaningful only when it saved others. The young human pilot Sora had saved recovered from her injuries. Her name was, and she asked to serve in Sora's squadron. Sora agreed and became one of her best pilots, teaching others how to push their ships beyond normal limits. 3 months after the first battle, gathered all the senior officers for a briefing. The meeting room was full of both species, working together naturally now. I need to tell you something, said. The Void Collective has consumed 40 galaxies. They've been spreading across the universe for thousands of years. Humanity has been fighting them for 2 centuries, but we're just one species. We can't win alone. How many species are fighting? Asked. 53, answered. The Galactic Council of Free Peoples. We're all committed to stopping the Void Collective, no matter how long it takes. And the Empire? Empress asked. Would make an excellent addition, said. Your empire has resources, technology, and now experience fighting this enemy. We need you. Didn't hesitate. The empire joins the council. We'll commit 60% of our military forces to the greater war. Around the room, officers from both species nodded their approval. They had fought together, bled together, and learned to trust each other. This alliance was no longer just about survival. It was about building something better. Later that night, stood with on an observation deck, watching the combined fleet in orbit. Thousands of ships, human and working together perfectly. You know, said, when we first detected your fleet, I was terrified. I thought humanity had come to destroy us. And now, asked. Now I understand. You weren't coming to destroy, you were coming to save. Shook his head. We came to fight the Void Collective. Saving you was just part of that mission. But you did save us, insisted. And you're teaching us how to save others. That's more valuable than any weapon. They stood in silence for a moment, then said, You asked me once why we're called the Terran Defense Fleet. It's because we defend all sapient life, not just humanity. That's what makes us who we are. Smiled. Perhaps that's what makes all of us human now. Not the species we were born as, but the values we choose to live by. I like that philosophy, said. Far above them, more human ships arrived from deeper in Terran space. Massive carriers, supply vessels, and fleet command ships. Watching the arrival realized something important. What they had seen in the first battle wasn't humanity's full strength. It was just humanity testing whether they were worth saving. Apparently, they had passed the test. 50 years later, military academies would teach the human doctrine as required study. The main lesson was simple. Hope is not a strategy, but determination is. Young officers would learn about the day humanity arrived in their territory, how fear turned to alliance, and how that alliance saved their civilization. The Terran Alliance would go on to liberate 12 galaxies from the Void Collective. They would fight together for decades, losing battles but winning wars, always pushing forward, never surrendering. And they would carry humanity's creed into every battle. We fight not because we cannot lose, but because we refuse to surrender. The Empire had detected a massive armada and hoped it wasn't humanity. In the end, they learned to hope it was.